CBS News and the Washington Post have obtained White House records of former President Trump's activities on the day of the Capitol insurrection. They reveal a nearly 8-hour gap in entries in call log and daily diaries. This raises important questions about what President Trump was doing at the time and whether he was making calls on so-called burner phones, which are disposable and untraceable. Chief election and campaign correspondent Robert Costa revealed this information, along with Bob Woodward of the Washington Post. Robert, good morning.
Good morning. We have obtained 11 pages of internal White House records from the day of the attack that were turned over to the January 6th committee. They show for the first time a detailed and official account of Trump's phone calls and behind-the-scenes activities that day. They also notably contain a gap in the official records during the assault. Something is missing, since the gap stands in contrast to extensive public reporting about his calls at the time.
As chaos engulfed the Capitol building on January 6th, President Trump spoke repeatedly on the phone with allies and supporters, some of whom urged him to put an end to the violence. But none of those calls are reflected in the 11 pages of those White House records for January 6th given to the House Select Committee. There is a massive 7-hour and 37-minute gap in calls from 11:17 a.m. to 6:54 p.m., which includes the most violent period of the attack. CBS News has confirmed at least 2 calls during the attack that do not appear on the phone log or the daily diary. One call from Trump to Utah Republican Mike Lee, and another call to Trump from House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy, who described it to Norah O'Donnell by phone as the violence was unfolding. The committee is now investigating whether the president and top aides used so-called burner or disposable phones to avoid scrutiny of their calls during that time. The logs do show several incoming and outgoing calls on the morning of January 6, including from Rudy Giuliani and former President Trump's chief strategist, Steve Bannon. At 8:37 a.m., Trump spoke with Bannon, who sources say told him to call Vice President Mike Pence and urge him to block certification of the election. Trump later did phone Pence, failing to persuade him. But that call is not listed in the records. There is a listing at 11:17 a.m. The president talked on a phone call to an unidentified person. CBS News has learned the Pence call was in that time frame. There's also a lengthy gap in records of the former president's movements during the attack, as recorded in his daily diary. At 1:21 p.m., the records note the president met with his valet. That notation signifies the president's return to the Oval Office from the rally. The next entry isn't until 4:03. The president went to the Rose Garden, it reads, where he participated in a video message to supporters.
This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home.
Bob Woodward said uncovering former President Trump's actions in those nearly 8 hours will be a key part of the committee's investigation.
These records seem to have disappeared. This is the day when they are protesting the January 6th effort to certify who's president. And the certification was that Joe Biden won. And 1,000 people attacked the Capitol right at that time that there's this gap. Who was he talking to? What was he doing?
Last night, Trump said in a statement, "I have no idea what a burner phone is. To the best of my knowledge, I have never even heard the term." A Trump spokesperson said that Trump had nothing to do with the records and assumed any and all of his phone calls were recorded and preserved. Anne-Marie, Vlad.
All right, Robert, thank you very much. We want to bring in Scott MacFarlane now, who's in Washington following the latest on a number of different things. So, Scott, thanks for joining us. The first thing I actually want to ask you about is something that a federal judge said out of California yesterday. The federal judge ruled that it is, quote, likely that former President Trump committed crimes in efforts to stop Congress from certifying the 2020 election. Why would he say something like that?
Well, Anne-Marie, it was a narrow case, but a huge statement by this federal judge. Let me tell you about the case first. there's a set of emails from Trump advisor and attorney John Eastman that the January 6th committee has been trying to obtain. Eastman's trying to keep them to himself. The judge was ruling on that issue and ruled Eastman will have to hand over those dozens of emails. It was a narrow dispute over emails. But the judge, in his opinion, made these striking statements about Donald Trump and John Eastman and their planning, saying, among other things, that the two of them were planning a coup and would end the peaceful transfer of power in America, and said that it's more likely than not that Donald Trump tried to block an official congressional proceeding. That's a federal crime. These statements by the judge were, to a degree, unnecessary in his ruling, but they're a profound statement in America, where even the judge acknowledges many people are still searching for accountability for January 6th, and that without accountability, the judge says, there's a risk of another January 6th.
Let me ask you this, Scott. The January 6th committee voted unanimously to hold former Trump advisors Peter Navarro and Dan Scavino in contempt of Congress for refusing to comply with the congressional probe. Have we heard from either Navarro or Scavino?
Yeah, Navarro has been pretty unequivocal, Vlad, that he believes this is a partisan witch hunt of sorts, this search for his records, this search for his testimony. But the January 6th committee has been equally strident, saying Navarro has been stonewalling them. They want his testimony. They want to know what he was planning in the weeks before January 6th. The committee says he's not participating, but also they say he's going on media outlets talking about the very thing they want to question him about. But you see the statement there from Peter Navarro using the phrase witch hunt to describe what he believes they're doing. Dan Scavino, the social media manager for Donald Trump, the committee says he's slow-walking the committee as well. We'll see when the U.S. House plans a vote on this recommendation last night from the January 6th committee. It's a three-step process. The first step is now done. There's been a formal recommendation by the committee for a contempt of Congress prosecution for Navarro and Scavino. The second step's up to the U.S. House. They have to plan and stage a vote. If the majority votes to formally refer them to the Justice Department, then the third step begins. The Justice Department decides whether to, in fact, prosecute both men for contempt of Congress. There have been other recommendations, but as of this morning, only one person has been prosecuted as recommended by the committee, and that's Steve Bannon. His attorney says in a few weeks he's going to try to get those charges dismissed, but in the meantime, Bannon's set for trial in late July.
So let me play, Scott, a little bit of what the chairman of the committee, Benny Thompson, said when it comes to Navarro and Scavino. Let's play that.
In Mr. Scavino's case, he strung us along for months before making it clear that he believes he's above the law. Mr. Navarro, despite sharing relevant details on TV and podcast and in his own book, he also stonewalled us.
So, Scott, you laid out how Navarro and Scavino are responding. You just heard from Benny Thompson. I guess the question on a lot of people's minds are, what power does Congress have? What kind of power do they have to compel these individuals to stand before them or to testify? And what can they do if they choose not to?
You're seeing what they do when witnesses choose not to. They have this formal vote. They recommend prosecution. But so far, through the many months this committee has existed, they have yet to exact any pain on witnesses for defying them. Steve Bannon's being prosecuted, but Steve Bannon, outside the courthouse last week, was holding court, saturating himself in media coverage, willingly so, using it as a platform to continue his denialism about the 2020 election.
And raise a lot of money.
Doesn't feel like he's... Exactly. And he has the capacity to use that media coverage to further his own interests. The other witnesses who defy the committee have yet to be charged with a crime. They've yet to be forced or compelled to testify or speak to the committee. So the committee has yet to exact pain. That is not a good way to wrangle future witnesses. That being said, Vlad and Anne-Marie, we're told, and we are reporting, that Jared Kushner will appear later this week to meet with the committee. He wasn't in the country on January 6, 2021. He was overseas on government business, but the committee wants to speak to him because the committee wants to speak to anybody who had the ear of Donald Trump in those pivotal weeks between November 3, 2020, Election Day, and January 6, 2021.
And as we already know, Scott and Vlad, just because you show up doesn't actually mean you cooperate either, because we've had a lot of I can't remember and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Scott, thank you very much.
Thank you.